I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.
All right. We are back, my brother. How are we feeling?
We're ready. We are ready to rock and roll.
100%?
I just checked. It looks like we might have kicked our boys off of YouTube. So sorry about that, fellas. Didn't mean to do that if that's what happened. But we're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We're live on Twitter. And if you're listening to the audio podcast afterwards on Apple or Spotify, come on over to that YouTube channel. We're 8 short of 600 subscribers. So come on over.
Right
the
there.
water is warm.
Right on the cusp of that 600th. It's fun. I'm ready to get back into some fantasy talk, man. We're getting towards the back end of the season. We are in the back end of the season. It's week 11 coming up. That's really
playoffs, man.
4, maybe 5 more games left of the regular season before you're in there, depending on how your league's structured. Man, we're right there. It's like it's crunch time. It's you're watching Red Zone, and when Scott Hansen comes on with the witching hour, when wins become losses, losses become wins. This is the witching period of fantasy football, where playoff contenders become near misses for the playoffs, and where guys who are in the basement of the division surge back, and it could be a variety of things that get them there. Breakout performances, coaching changes at this time of the year can spark offenses. We can see different players coming back from injury, players getting injured. Just that shift in power within your leagues can happen so quickly. And we've seen it seems like every year there's always that front runner type of team that has a couple bad breaks, narrowly misses, and someone that resurrects their team and makes their way in. So a lot of wild stuff. This is what fantasy football is all about these last 4 weeks.
Yeah, and I think this is the time to not only obviously fight for your playoff hopes, but start to think about what those playoffs look like for you. We've got a dynasty league that 3 or 4 years, the 8 seed has won the championship, right? Because once you're in the playoffs, it's a 1 week, anything can happen.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what fantasy football is all about. It's 1 week play. Like anything can happen every single week. Obviously, over the course of the regular season, you have multiple weeks to figure that out. But once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. So start planning for that now. Start looking at, if you're streaming quarterbacks all year long, start looking at those quarterback matchups for the playoffs. Start looking at those defensive matchups for the playoffs. This is the time to start preparing for your championship. Don't wait until week 15 to then try to pick up that, streaming quarterback that's going to be playing against the Arizona Cardinals or whatever, like go get those guys now.
Start stashing them. At this point, we don't have too many bye weeks left, right? And so you should be able to rotate a lot of those other guys off of your roster, fill those with those guys that have better matchups that you can stream for that week 14, week 13 bye that's going to come up and bite some people in the butt as they're getting towards it, or maybe that injury that hits, or a starter gets benched a couple weeks early because their playoff positioning is solidified. Those are all things that can happen and have happened in playoffs. So just things to watch out for. Teams are going to play it a little bit safer in the real world with the NFL. So if somebody tweaks something and they're a contender, we were talking about Rashee Rice, so he's the first one that comes to mind. Week 13, week 14, he tweaks something in his ankle or whatever, or Pacheco, I can count on the Chiefs to hold that guy back the remainder of the season, most likely. And so having that contingency is huge for sure.
Yeah, the last thing I'll mention here as we prepare for the playoffs really over the next couple weeks, if you're holding on to that guy, that guy that hasn't done anything all year long.
Cut him.
You know, we're getting to the point of the season. If they're not producing still, it's probably time to move on. If you need that roster spot to pick up that handcuff running back, if you need that roster spot to pick up that streaming defense for the next couple weeks, it's okay to start moving on from these guys who just are not performing the way that we thought they would perform, whether it was when we drafted them or when we picked them up, you know, because they're the hot waiver wire guy and they haven't done anything, you know. Thinking about like McLaughlin, whatever his name is at Denver. Like he was hot for a minute, but he's not anymore, you know, and he's really outside of being a Javonte Williams handcuff at this point. You don't need him. So just think about those things. I don't mind handcuffing running backs at this point in the season. I don't really draft that way, but now that we're this far into the season, if you need to, I don't mind that. If I've got Tony Pollard, maybe I try to pick up Rico Dowdle. You know, if I've got Brian Robinson and some reason Gibson's not picked up, maybe I look at, you know, there's some good handcuffs out there that I definitely look at over the next couple of weeks, try to get them on your bench.
Absolutely. Yeah. Time to cut ties on your Christian Watsons and your Rashad Batemans. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Bateman, man. Whew, Bateman's been like a 4-year freaking project, dude. Golly. Nate, what is up? Nate's in the chat with us tonight. Ready for another big week out of Keenan Allen, Dak, and Jahmyr Gibbs.
I need a big Gibbs week.
I just want to make sure we caution Keenan Allen. You know, we want to make sure he's in this week. I do think he'll end up playing, but I know he came out last week. Huge week last week from him. Huge week from Dak and Gibbs. That's you got those guys on your team. You're looking pretty good.
We'll jump into some NFL news here, but first I want to give a shout out to Dak Prescott for doubling Brandon Cook's season output in a single game while the person I was playing started him. So I just want to say thank you, Dak Prescott, for finally getting Brandon Cooks the ball the 1 week I needed you to keep status quo.
And guys like Brandon Cooks, Noah Brown, they had to get played last week because there was no Eagles, no Chiefs, no Dolphins on the slate or on the weekend, right? That's 4 or 5 top fantasy guys, pass catchers that you're not playing. So you got to play guys like Brandon Cooks and Noah Brown, and they have great games. And you know that that's like the first time they've been started all year, and here they are having great games.
Blood boiling to say the least, especially when you're rostering Tony Pollard and he can't get one damn touchdown.
Dude. Is Tony Pollard the most frustrating fantasy running back of all time?
It's frustrating to me because he's still top 20. Like, how is this happening? How is he constantly dodging the end zone and maintaining this status that's like, who am I going to start over him? Because I know it's going to be the 1 week I put him on the bench like DeAndre Hopkins where he goes off for 3 touchdowns. So it's like waiting around for that.
And it's like, but it's a couple seasons long too, right? Before it was always like, oh man, why do they keep playing Zeke? This Tony Pollard guy is the real deal. Look at him. You know, was it Thanksgiving last year? There was a prime time or a single game slate that Tony Pollard just absolutely went off. Caught a screen pass, took it to the house, and just dominated. It was the only game on TV.
I think it was like a 3 touchdown game, honestly.
Why aren't they playing this guy? Like, this guy's obviously, better than Zeke. And then Zeke's gone. And now Rico Dowdle is getting in the end zone. And Ferguson and Lamb and Dak runs it in and Lamb runs it in. It's like, y'all just scored 6 touchdowns and Tony Pollard hasn't even sniffed the end zone. It's it's frustrating as a Tony Pollard guy, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, it's been a love-hate situation. Loved it the first 3, have hated it since.
That's right. Dak's been playing, dude. Dak's been off the chain this year. He has really played great. Absolutely played great. Definitely using his legs a little more. This new offensive scheme. Maybe Kellen Moore was the issue, Maybe he was the problem. But Dan, we got a lot to get into, so we probably ought to get off of our Pollard soapbox. We'll talk news, obviously, as we always do. Start sits. If you're in the chat tonight, as always, please throw your start sits questions in there. We'll get anything you have answered for you, and we'll go through our own starts and sits. And per usual, we'll end out the week with a little bit of Thursday night action, kind of get you started on your lineup builds for tomorrow night. But we'll start with the week 11 bye weeks: Atlanta, New Orleans, New England, and the Colts. Dan, any guys jump out to you here that we're not going to have in our starting lineups this week?
If you've been starting anyone on New England aside from Ramondre Stevenson, I mean, even Ramondre is nothing greater than a flex play at this point. I'm sorry, but your season might be done if that's a position that you've been in. For the other teams, you got your Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, maybe. We don't know what we're going to get from him anymore. But Bijan, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara being probably one of my favorite draft acquisitions on any team I've picked him on this year. And then, of course, Michael Pittman has just been the model of consistency.
Yep.
He's going to get you your 75 and 6 catches just about every single week. So those are all guys that could leave some holes in your offense. Not nearly as bad as last week, right? When you got Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles, and Rams with Puka and Cooper all on the bye week. This one's a little more palatable, but definitely some star power here still.
Yeah, the JT is starting to get involved in the game, in the offense a little bit more over last couple weeks, week after week. So hopefully getting out of that bye week, he'll be more healthy. And then Bijan, dude, Arthur Smith finally used him last week. It was awesome to see.
Finally,
you love to see it. Hopefully coming out of the bye week, he'll continue to use him because Bijan is very, very good.
Yeah, he's been great. Not leaning on the committee as much in Atlanta, so that's huge for sure.
I did hear that they were planning to do this. That all along they're planning to kind of slowly ramp up Bijan, and maybe that's really the case, or maybe that's just an excuse because so many people have really, put the fire to Arthur Smith for not using Bijan. But I really hope after this bye week I think Bijan, talent-wise, Bijan has the talent to be a league winner. After the bye, down the playoff stretch, definitely has the talent to be a league winner. If somebody's out there that doesn't really trust Arthur Smith, take a shot. Try to see if you can't land a trade before the bye week's over. If they're in a bye week hell this week for some reason, they've got Bijan and Kamara and Pittman or something. Like maybe they need a running back, so send them Bijan. Maybe they got Stevenson as well, so you can go get a guy like Bijan this week just to give them somebody to play. So definitely not somebody that I'm not necessarily like desperate to grab, but if somebody's really low on him, this could be a good time to grab him.
Well, I think that's a good talking point too. Before we keep going through the news, it's like teams are going to be, managers are going to be a little more desperate to get into the playoffs, especially if they're right on the fringe of that wild card spot or the division, and they got this bye week. They're going to feel the pressure of that a little more than what they would otherwise. So I think now is the time to, buy low, sell high, those situations for, any trade scenarios and stack your roster up a little bit to put you in a better position for your own playoff run. There's going to be risks involved with trade no matter what, because you never know when the next injury or whatever the case might happen. But, take advantage of that. If you feel like there's a player you can go out there and get, just best case scenario, you get that player. Worst case, they say no, and you keep your status quo with a team that's already been taking you to the playoffs. So
that's right. I'm a big proponent of the 2-for-1. So especially if I've got a pretty good team, taking 2 players and trying to upgrade one of the positions, because at the end of the day, like you're only going to end up starting a handful of guys, and so yes, while you need your bench, if you've got a couple guys on your bench week to week that are performing, put them with one of your studs and get a better stud, right? Can you put Mike Evans with a running back and get AJ Brown or something to that matter, to where you're upgrading one of your positions, but you're upgrading your starter. And so I try to do that a lot, especially down the stretch when my bench doesn't matter as much because you're only a couple weeks left and you're trying to get to the playoffs. So take a look at some 2-for-1s if you can. Let's jump into some injuries here though. Big news out of Cleveland today.
Deshaun Watson,
man,
he's donezo. Got that shoulder. They said it was
a broken bone in his shoulder.
Yeah, they're saying it's a different injury than what plagued him earlier this year. Something he ended up playing through in that game, but he's going to need to opt in for that season-ending surgery, and that puts Dorian Thompson, Robinson or something like these 5 names.
Yeah,
he's going to be in line to start for that team, and that trickle down is going to be something to see. Amari Cooper, significantly less production without Deshaun Watson. David Njoku, it's the same story. This does really great things for the stocks of Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, because I think they're going to shift more to that running style, kind of like what they did with Nick Chubb when he was in full time. But, one of those things that maybe you have 2 quarterbacks, right? Just not to steer too far from the trade conversation, I guess. You got CJ Stroud. You've got one of the top 5 guys. You can flip one of them for someone that needs to replace Watson. Yep. Like, those are scenarios to explore as well. But this is definitely going to have a trickle-down effect for any of those Browns players.
Yeah, I think you and I are both talking about a Brown later on, and it's not in the start column. So I think that we are both on the same page without talking about it. I can just see in the sheet we're on the same page with how we think this affects this Browns offense, and definitely lowering our expectations around them. There's a lot of positive news though this week. A lot of guys coming off of, or at least opening their window to come off of the IR. And first and foremost, man, my boy, I've been waiting on this guy for 4 weeks now. Devin Achane coming back, man. Let's go. He looks so great. It's so fun to watch. Just explosive. And he fit right in with this offense. I'm so happy to see he's going to be back this week. Really looking forward to seeing Achane back on the field. And he's the one, I think, outside of these quarterbacks, but he's one of them that I think he's in line to play this week.
Yeah. All signs are pointing to it. Not a terrible matchup. They have the Raiders this week. So
one of the best matchups in the league.
Pretty good to get him back in at that time. It's funny, he was out for the first 3 weeks of his 4 weeks out. He was still top 7 running back, which is just insane to me. And right now I think sits right outside the top 15 after last week's slate of games. So getting this guy back is going to be a huge game changer for any teams that have him on the roster, on the squad. I've got him on 2 of my teams that are already holding playoff positions. So I am loving the return of Devon Achane.
Yeah, only really played 3 games. And like you said, top 7. Like that's just ridiculous.
Efficiency.
Because his first game, he only had 2 touches.
Yeah.
And against New England. Nothing week 1, 2 touches against New England. And then absolutely goes off for 7 touchdowns in 3 games?
Just a tear. Well, I think with most leagues, he's the highest scoring player on the year with what he did in that game against Denver, right? 4 touchdowns in that game. So it's pretty wild.
Here's the schedule real quick. Las Vegas, great matchup. Gets the Jets twice, and the Jets actually are a pretty good matchup on the ground. They are a heck of a defense, and through the air, you can't really move the ball at all. But on the ground, they're actually not as good as it might seem. Washington's gettable. Tennessee hasn't been nearly as good on the ground. They've given up over 100 yards rushing over like the last 4 weeks, which is kind of weird because that's a defense that we wanted to avoid a lot, but
they
they've
were
given it
super
up a little
stingy
bit.
early in the year.
And then playoffs are, Jets, Dallas, and Baltimore. So you don't necessarily love that. But for me, a guy like A-Chain and this offense, I'm not worried at all about it.
No, not at all. Baltimore, honestly, I think you can get some solid yards out of him against them. Dallas is going to be tricky. It really is going to depend on what the game script calls for in that one. Because I could see the Dolphins just picking on their secondary and kind of relying on Tyreek and those guys. Not to do too much analysis for a game that's happening in 6 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. So, obviously going to be a huge boost for your team in the short term and getting you into the playoffs at the very least.
Another stud coming back. Obviously, the stud, Justin Jefferson.
Consensus number one.
Yeah, he's still questionable for this week, but it looks like he's trending in the right direction. Should make it back for this week. Automatically, you're putting him right back in your lineup. Josh Dobbs has been pretty good recently. Going over Minnesota, been really great actually. If anything, I think this actually drops Hawkinson a little bit because Hawkinson has been on fire since Josh Dobbs has come over. Dobbs just loves Hawk, and you can see that connection. But I do think Jefferson kind of takes a little bit, not too much. Minnesota's on fire just as a whole, as a team. So getting Jefferson back will be great. And then 2 quarterbacks. Matt Stafford will be back. Not necessarily a big deal for your quarterback position. I think it's a big deal for Kupp and Puka Nacua, though. You want Stafford in there if you're relying on those 2 guys down the stretch. And then somebody who is important for your quarterback position, Justin Fields, will be playing this week. Super excited to get Fields back. If you remember last year, it was the 6-week stretch down the end of the season where he really started going off. Not saying he's automatically going to do that again this year, but this is about the time that he started taking off last year. Coming back from injury, we'll see how that goes for Justin Fields, but happy to have him back on the field.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be a big boost for DJ Moore, who's been missing him a little bit the last couple of weeks. No touchdowns since that absence. And, while he's still getting plenty of targets, it just hasn't been the production that we saw with Fields on the field. So definitely anybody that's got DJ Moore out there, you got to be feeling pretty happy about that. A lot of trickle downs with Stafford coming back. Totally agree there. I think another angle to look at too is Dobbs, when he was with Arizona, really focused on one guy, right? He was always doing it to Hollywood Brown. That was the main guy, getting double-digit targets a game. This is going to impact Jordan Addison too. Justin Jefferson coming back. So while you've been able to kind of rely on him as an every week starter, might need to switch it up. Might need to pivot back to some of those other guys when JJ gets back on the field. Just a little observation on that one.
Yeah. If they had a great quarterback, you could have high hopes for all 3 of them. But Addison, Hawkinson, and Jefferson. But this is the first time I realized they all ended with son. So I don't side note.
3 sons.
Addison, Hawkinson, and Jefferson. Anyways, let's get into starts and sits here. Madison. Oh goodness. Golly. Well, we know what that GM looks for whenever he's scouting talent. Last names only. Let's get into our start sits of the week. Let's first start with Nate's question here in the chat. And thank you, Nate. If you are in the chat here with us tonight, throw your start sits questions in here. We'll answer them for you. He says A-Chain. What? Well, start sit A-Chain and Browns D. Do you start him or sit him? I guess is what he's asking.
That's
A-Chain's an automatic start for me.
I agree. I'm with you there. The Browns are playing the Steelers this week.
Steelers, yep, in a divisional matchup.
I like that start.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on, are you trying to stream them over one of your constant defenses? Like if you have the Steelers, stick with the Steelers. You know what I mean? Like if you're already playing Washington against the Giants this week, stick with them. But if you're looking for a defense to play, Cleveland's available, or maybe you have Cleveland and you're trying to decide if you need to stream, I think you're good to keep Cleveland in there, 100%. Kenny Pickett, not necessarily the most dangerous quarterback. These games tend to be very low scoring between the Steelers and Browns, at least as long as you're not looking at that Baker Mayfield playoff win over them. So, I mean, all other things being constant, man, the Browns, they've been, if anything, they've been all over opposing quarterbacks and applying pressure, getting sacks, generating turnovers. I'm not worried about starting the Browns defense this week.
Yeah, I like the Browns 100%. Kenny Pickett is, I don't think he's it. Maybe it's not a Kenny Pickett problem. Maybe it's a Matt Canada problem, but there's a problem there in Pittsburgh. Yeah. That is for sure.
I got to sort some things out.
All right, let's get into our starts and sits of the week. And Dan, I'll let you kick it off with your starting quarterback.
Yeah, man. I'm jumping on the CJ Stroud train, and not just because he's playing Arizona this week. Obviously, that's a great matchup for him and what he can do with all those other pieces there in Houston. But this is also my opportunity to tell you to just keep him in your lineup. If you don't have Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, maybe Prescott at this point in the season, or Lamar Jackson, you plug him in every single week. That's going to be your number one starter. So I love CJ Stroud this week to match his season average on passing yards, which has been over 300 yards. He's well on track for Rookie of the Year, and he's going to throw some touchdowns against these guys.
You know what's funny is like Houston has a negative pass rate over expectation. So essentially they're not passing as much as what, they would be expected to be passing, but they're just so efficient. And they've got CJ Stroud and Nico Collins and Tank Dell and now Noah Brown, like the resurgence of Noah Brown over the last couple of weeks. It's just been awesome. I mean, he's been pretty efficient with some of his stuff. And I would agree with you. Arizona, Jacksonville, Denver, Jets, Tennessee. You're Tennessee twice in the playoffs. They got a bad defense. I'm excited to see CJ Stroud here down the stretch. And
the Texans gonna mess around and win that division. So
I was saying, I was about to say, could he lead this team to the playoffs and
they're winning the South?
Can he be the MVP?
No, I'm not ready for that.
All right.
If they pick CJ Stroud,
I think he's got Rookie of the Year wrapped up, right?
Oh, that's a done deal. I might put some cash on that just for shits and gigs. But if they take CJ Stroud over a guy like Tyreek Hill, I mean, change the name of the damn award. Change the name of the award if you're going to give it to CJ Stroud over Tyreek Hill. Change the damn name, because it is not the most valuable player at that point.
I kind of just want to see. I want to see what it would be. I'll see if I can find it. I just want to see what his odds are for MVP, honestly.
Stroud?
Yeah.
Oh, man, he's got to be like plus 1,200, which is not bad odds, but I think it's just because a lot of bettors are putting some money on him.
Season awards. Here we go. MVP. Mahomes leads it at plus 270. CJ Stroud is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in the betting odds at plus 2,000 behind
2,000.
Mahomes, Hurts, Tua, Lamar, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud.
Joe Burrow's got more MVP clout than him. That's surprising.
For sure.
Yeah.
Tyreek is the leader in the clubhouse for Offensive Player of the Year, because that's what it is. MVP
that's
is the quarterback. MVP is the quarterback. Player of the Year is the running backs or wide receivers or whatnot. That's literally what it is, right? Like that's all these NFL awards are. All right, let's get back to fantasy football. Less about betting. If you want more betting, you can always check out Sportsbook Junkies on the Bite Size Sports YouTube page. They actually went live right before us tonight, so go check them out. Talking all sorts of sports, racing to NCAA basketball, NBA, NFL, football, NCAA football. I mean, they hit everything. So if you love betting, go check them out. I'm going with Sam Howell this week for my start of the week for quarterback against the New York Giants. Washington, third highest pass rate over expectation. They're only behind the Chiefs and the Bengals. This team is throwing the ball a lot. Obviously, Eric Bieniemy there coming from Kansas City, going to Washington. He's doing his thing with Sam Howell, letting him cook all over the place. The only time, not the only time, but the main time that Sam Howell struggles is when he's being pressured. The New York Giants have the second worst sack rate in the league. I liked how last week against the Seahawks for the exact same reason, because they also are pretty bad at applying pressure to the quarterback. He put up a top 5 week. I love Sam Howell this week. The Giants are just a really bad football team. They've mailed it in for the season, I think.
Oh yeah, they want Caleb Williams at this point. That's what they're doing.
Might as well go for it. New York, baby.
You keep Tommy DeVito as your starting QB and not make any other changes, you're tanking. Yep. So, no, that's a great pick. Howell has been honestly very serviceable as a fill-in. If you're, not banking on him on a weekly basis, he's going to get you some respectable points. So I really like that start. On the running back side of things, I'm looking at Javonte Williams going up against Minnesota. Minnesota really not the toughest rush defense in the league. They're about middle of the pack. But I love the volume that Javonte Williams has gotten the last 3 weeks, which just happens to coincide with the Broncos winning streak. So they've been leaning on that quite a bit. Russell Wilson's had less than 200 yards in the majority of his games this season, and a lot of that's because they've been relying on the running game, which is now focused on Javonte Williams. So about 80 yards the last 3 games, couple touchdowns the last couple weeks, including one against the Bills, plenty of work in the passing game, 3-4 catches a week. I see that continuing against Minnesota this week as they continue to ride him out, and in their possible playoff run. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I think we all expected that from Sean Payton to eventually get Williams involved in the passing game. We saw what he did with running backs in the past. I'm going to turn the clock back, but Pierre Thomas, Reggie Bush. You saw it with Alvin Kamara before he got out of there. He's going to, rely on Javonte quite a bit. So I like him this week.
Yeah, the running back and the defense, that's Sean Payton special. It's starting to show up there in Denver right now. It's crazy to hear you say that their potential playoff run. That's just crazy to hear.
The AFC is wild right now.
Beating the Chiefs, beating the Bills. That's a good start. That's a good start to a playoff run.
Great.
I'm going
resume.
I'm going Raheem Mostert against Las Vegas. We've already talked about A-Chain quite a bit. And I think what's going to end up happening is people are going to see A-Chain is back, and now they're not going to want to go to Mostert because A-Chain's back. But I think that's not going to be irrelevant by any means just because A-Chain is back. We saw both of these guys get there previously whenever A-Chain was in. Now they get a team in Las Vegas giving up over 135 rushing yards a game. I think Miami is going to run the ball a lot this weekend, and I just caution, like, don't sit Raheem Mostert just because Devin A-Chain is back. Put them both in your lineup this week.
I mean, are we feeling another 70-point game against an AFC West team? I feel like it could trend that way. Like, game script could get them to just hand the ball off.
Yep. Yeah, I would love their team. They're over on their team total for the week. That I would like that.
Make me happy.
Yeah.
At wide receiver, I'm going with DJ Moore. The return of Justin Fields is big for him. They're going up against Detroit, who has allowed wide receivers to just run rampant on their defense. We saw what Keenan Allen did last week. We've seen it time and time again. The Seahawks receivers had great weeks against this defense. I feel really good about DJ Moore this week and keeping him, or at least plugging it back into the lineup after having some subpar weeks the last couple weeks with Fields out.
I need it. I need it for my soul. I need it for my fantasy teams. I need to get DJ Moore back out there. So I'm hoping that you're absolutely right, and I expect to be starting him everywhere as well. I'm going a little further down the rankings this week. I'm going to put Rashee Rice in as my start of the week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Rice led all Chiefs wide receivers in snap shares in weeks 8 and week 9, and he's led all wide receivers for the Chiefs in targets from week 7 through week 9. So their last 3 games they've played. Coming off of a bye week, this is a perfect opportunity to integrate a rookie even heavier in a offense. The Chiefs are desperate to find who that number 1 wide receiver is going to be behind Travis Kelce as the second pass catcher. You get a bottom 5 pass defense, and the Eagles are the best fantasy opposition for wide receivers. They're 32nd in the league in fantasy points allowed against wide receivers. So, the injuries have really depleted this secondary. It's a really decent defense up front, but the back end is pretty porous. I look for Patrick Mahomes to potentially have a pretty good game here. And if this offense can get to going, and Rashee Rice could be that number 2 pass catcher, give me some Rashee Rice this week.
Love that play. Love that play. I know I'll be plugging him in as a flex on a couple of my teams this week for sure. One of them, I'm plugging him in over DeAndre Hopkins. So there you go. Tight end. I'm looking at Jake Ferguson as my start of the week. My man Jay Ferg is on a 3-week touchdown streak with the Dallas Cowboys, and he gets a juicy matchup against the Carolina Panthers, who are like bottom 3 in the league again. As in terms of fantasy tight ends and allowing that position to score in particular. The Panthers defense, I've talked about it before, they're ravaged with injuries right now. They are going to get J.C. Horn back here soon, but they're still going to be missing a lot of their defensive pieces, which has just allowed teams to carve them up. So Jay Ferg, sticking with him this week as who I think is going to be the number 1 overall tight end this week.
Fergie, you need to share some of the touchdown love with your boy Tony Pollard. Come on now. Come on, let somebody else score a couple of those touchdowns.
Let's start with Prescott just handing Pollard the ball inside the 10.
Just a couple times.
Give him a freaking shot, man. Give him a
couple chances here. I'm going to go Trey McBride out of Arizona here. This is an opportunity. You mentioned it earlier with CJ Stroud. This is an opportunity for me to just talk about Trey McBride, the second best tight end over the past 3 weeks.
He's been great.
He has been awesome, and Kyler Murray's back, and Kyler Murray is a good quarterback, and he's going to keep Trey McBride involved. I don't think we're going to see Zach Ertz again this year. If we do, I don't think he's going to do much. I think that McBride has taken this opportunity while Ertz has been out and solidified himself as this team's tight end of the future. If you haven't bought in yet, now's the time to buy in. If you've snagged him and, he's maybe sitting on your bench and you have an extra tight end or whatnot, maybe there's an opportunity to trade one of the two. But if you picked him up just to use him here and there, he's almost becoming a lock in your lineup. So jump on the Trey McBride train because it is moving down the tracks, and this kid, he's good. And I think he's going to continue to flourish over the next couple of weeks with Kyler back.
See, my draft strategy did not involve drafting a tight end very high this year. I think I took Mark Andrews in one of my leagues, and that was pretty much it. 2 of my leagues, and that was pretty much it. And one of those because he slipped so far to me, and I just had no choice. But the other strategy I deployed was grabbing rookie tight ends later. Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, and Jake Ferguson, they've all been really great. The downside to that strategy is I've not been able to take advantage of Trey McBride in any of the leagues just because I already have kind of a solidified position there with either Andrews or one of those rookie duos, a combination of one of those 3 guys. So if you do not have one of those tight ends that you can rely on each and every week that's not getting that volume, and Trey McBride is somehow available for trade, the positional indifference or difference there for tight ends is insane. You just be bringing so much value into your starting lineup. You're able to acquire a guy like that, especially for your down stretch. So love the call on McBride and love the opportunity for anyone to go out and grab him before the deadline. Because more than likely, the team that has him did not draft him. So they either have McBride or another tight end that you can maybe make a deal for.
I was trying to look it up to see where McBride was on ESPN because I don't think he's owned enough.
No, I mean my guess is probably
60% roster.
Yes,
so
I was going to say 60 to 70,
but still not enough. Still not enough. Go check it. Just go take a peek. Maybe he is available in your league, and if so, this is one of those guys we talked about earlier. Just put it, even if you don't need a starter, even if you had Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson, just put valuable, and either you will be able to trade him or you'll have somebody sitting there for, in case of emergency.
Yep, he's let's see here, 52% on NFL.com, 52% owned there.
Not enough.
Not enough for sure. And then let's look at Sleeper. Not as easy to find here. Okay, there it is. 57% in Sleeper.
Yeah, that's not enough. I would encourage everyone to just go look at every one of your leagues to see if Trey McBride is rostered, and if he's not, find a way to get him on your bench.
Snag
All right,
him.
let's talk about the sits of the week here. Dan, I'll let you get it started.
Yeah, my man. I am going to start this one off with Trevor Lawrence. Not a great showing last week, and I mean, it's a divisional game against the Tennessee Titans. I can see them putting a lot of pressure on him again. Trevor Lawrence was on his backside quite a bit in that last game, and
Jags didn't look good.
No, they didn't look good at all. And for the most part, I mean, we big offensive production type of games from Trevor Lawrence. He's been very pedestrian overall. So, if you've got an opportunity to grab one of those other quarterbacks, or maybe you have someone else on your bench that you can opt for, I would look into some of those other options this week with Trevor Lawrence going against Tennessee. Just don't like the matchup. They're pretty stingy, or they're pretty good at keeping quarterbacks under duress and under pressure. I could see this turning into a situation where he gets sacked a couple times, throws a pick, throws 2 picks, something like that. Keep it a low-scoring game. Divisional opponents, you just never know what you're going to get on top of it. So I'm not a big fan of Trevor Lawrence this week.
Yeah, kind of underwhelming this year. 18th in quarterback scoring through 10 weeks. Just very underwhelming. That offense, or this team in general, last week in particular, was a little underwhelming. And is this in Tennessee? Do we know?
It is not. It is in Jacksonville.
It's at home. Okay. I say that because it's weird. Jacksonville is actually undefeated on the road and 2-3 at home, which is just kind of a odd situation. But I think Tennessee's looking a little better. This defense is pretty good, so don't mind sitting Trevor Lawrence. It's been a tough year for him, outside of like the first week when Calvin Ridley went off.
Yeah. No, not a big fan of him. Who do you got this week?
I'm going with Josh Dobbs against the Denver Broncos. This is the hot commodity, right? This is the guy who everybody is flaunting over right now. He's been great. It's an awesome story, coming in to Minnesota for 4 days and having to be thrown into the game after the rookie quarterback gets hurt, and then goes on the road last week and went. Like, it's been a really fun story, and he's getting Justin Jefferson back potentially this week. So all those things would lead you to potentially want to play Josh Dobbs and keep him in your lineup. But we talked about this Denver team just a short time ago when you were talking about Javonte Williams. Denver faced Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen the last 2 weeks. Neither one of these two teams sniffed the top 12 in fantasy. Didn't even get close to being a top 12 quarterback. I think Mahomes ended up as a outside the top 25. Like, it was bad when they played the Broncos. I think we just need to lower our expectations for Josh Dobbs for this week, and I'm going to sit him.
Turning the clock to midnight on the Cinderella story.
That's right.
It's sad.
Is this me believing in the Broncos?
I don't like it. I don't like what I said, and I don't like what you're saying either.
I agree.
My sit of the week at running back is Najee Harris, who's had a string of a couple decent weeks. Like, definitely worth a play as an RB2 or a flex the last couple weeks. Got a touchdown in their last game. The problem with this game is that they're going on the road to face Cleveland, a defense that's very, very tough, not just against the run, but against offenses in general this year. Not to mention, it's that AFC North clash that we know will not be very high scoring. I'm not a fan of Najee. Jalen Warren likely is going to outpace him in a lot of ways, I think, with the touches and how those have been dispersed as well. So staying away from Najee this week, putting him on the bench. I like the matchup last week with him, but not this week.
I'll just name it really quick because this is player number 1 of 3 we're about to talk about for this game that we are sitting. 32.5 point over under. Like, the total is so low. I believe it's 7 points lower than the next total. If I see it right, 6 to 7 points lower than the next closest total. This game, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, we know what these look like on most occasions, right? That's usually a knockdown, drag out. Who can throw the last punch and kick a field goal to win the game? So, you're gonna hear about this game quite a bit here over the next 5 minutes because we are sitting a lot of guys from this game. The running back I'm going with, though, is on the other side of the AFC North matchups this week, and it's Joe Mixon against the Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be hard for a lot of people. It's Joe Mixon. Like, I drafted him high. I'm starting him every week. But right now, he's outside the top 15 season long for fantasy running backs. And really, he's not showing a lot on the field other than his name is Joe Mixon. He plays for the Bengals, which carries a lot of clout, but it's not really showing up in the box score. Baltimore, one of the toughest defenses to score on the ground against. I think they're tied for third best rushing touchdowns against. So I don't think that Joe Mixon can get there on volume alone. So unless he's scoring touchdowns, I could find him outside the top 20, 24 this week. I want to sit Joe Mixon.
Yeah, Joe Mixon's definitely been one of those guys that has benefited from the jersey that's on his back. The fact that it says his last name and it has those Bengals colors. Like, that's been the biggest benefit for him for sure. I didn't trust him a lot coming into this year, but I do like the pick. AFC North games are just sticky. I think that's why we have so many of those players from those matchups on this list this week. Shifting it over to wide receiver, Amari Cooper. You already talked about the point total. It's going to be low. If the over hits, it's not because any offensive players scored. It's because someone got a scoop and score or pick six. Am I right? So that's your cue to put a bet down for a defensive touchdown. Okay. Anything else, I'm not a fan of, and that includes Amari Cooper. His production is noticeably lower without Deshaun Watson, as I mentioned earlier in the show. I think he's averaging I looked it up earlier. It was 8 to 9 points, fantasy points a game without Deshaun Watson. So no touchdowns there. Leading the team in targets in those scenarios, but really not able to do much. A target isn't worth a damn if it's not catchable. So those are all things that I look at with this matchup that I'm not in love with. And unfortunately for Amari Cooper, that means he's going to be on the bench.
Rightfully so. Like, that's where he belongs, right?
Yeah.
this week. I almost put both of those guys, both Harris and Cooper, in as my sits. Like when I was looking through this earlier, they were both on my short list of sits. So I'm in full agreement with you on both of those guys. I'm going Chris Godwin against the San Francisco 49ers. Subpar season for Godwin. He's always been the volume guy in Tampa Bay. Like he's always been the guy that gets 10 catches for 70 yards but no touchdowns. Like that seems like be his forte.
Yep.
I don't really think it's who he is these days. And a lot of that's because Baker Mayfield is their quarterback now and not Tom Brady. That's kind of hurt him a little bit. Mike Evans is clearly still the touchdown machine he's always been, and Baker seems like he's going to him in those big moments. Just not enough volume to go around in Tampa Bay these days. And now you get a San Francisco team that looked way better coming out of the bye than the 3 games leading into the bye week, right? So they lost those 3 games, I think, right before the bye week. So I expect San Francisco to come in and continue their dominating season and just dominate this Tampa Bay offense.
No, I'm in agreement there. Don't like Baker's potential under that pressure. Man, that defensive line for San Fran is something else with Chase Young in it. I don't know if it's just they're juiced up about having him out there, or if that's going to be the long-term impact. But I mean, Chase Young, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa. You mentioned those 4 guys are all pro caliber guys and bona fide Pro Bowlers. And then on that next layer, you still got Fred Warner and Hufanga in the secondary. I mean, there's a lot of names on that defense. I'm going for tight end Logan Thomas. For Washington, obviously, I like Howell. The Giants seem like a juicy matchup, but surprisingly, they've been pretty stingy against fantasy tight ends this year. And I could see this turning into a scenario where Brian Robinson and Howell kind of run the show from a fantasy perspective. Maybe McLaurin gets involved. Maybe you get the odd Jahan Dotson touchdown in the middle of this mix, but I'm not too keen on Logan Thomas this week. Maybe look at some other streaming options because the matchup and the game script just doesn't seem very favorable to me.
Yeah, Logan Thomas, a guy I've been using quite a bit in season long this year. So got to find somebody else there probably this week. I'm going with David Njoku. Again, we said we were going to talk about this game quite a bit. He's looked better as of late, but now that Deshaun Watson's out and in this kind of a game, there's just not a lot that needs to be said at this point. But I'm going to pretty much sit as many players as I can from this game this week. David Njoku being one of them. Let's get into our high risk, high reward play of the week. We always try to give you guys one of these, somebody who's going to be risky. It's going to maybe not feel great putting them in your lineup. And there's definitely a chance that you walk away from this week feeling terrible about this player. But we also know that the ceiling is very, very high for these players if they were to hit. Dan, you've got a running back here that I've had multiple leagues, people trying to trade me this guy, and I've refused to go after him just because I'm so worried about this offense. But tell us why this guy is a high risk, high reward player this week.
Man, I'm going with Saquon Barkley. High risk, high reward. Obviously, the reward is very high. He has one of the higher ceilings amongst running backs because of what he can do, not just on the ground, but through the air. The guy can catch the ball. He can be that safety net for Tommy DeVito in the backfield. He can be that guy that gets the dump offs, the checkdowns, and they're going to need to rely on him in that facet.
Yeah.
Now the problem with that is they're going up against Washington, who has a tough front seven. Obviously, they traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young, but they're still able to generate plenty of pressure last week, and I could see them putting that in position where they get up early. The Giants get in a position where they have to pass the ball a little bit. DeVito's not really going to be able to get it done. Maybe he gets like 100, 130 yards, and Barkley gets shut down. I mean, that's literally the lowest of low floors and the highest of high ceilings that you could look at, and no other player embodies that more to me this week than Saquon Barkley.
He's got the talent, man. We know how he can pop off at any point in time. So don't mind that. I'm going Devontae Smith against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. The Chiefs have stifled wide receiver ones this year, and really just wide receivers in general. Been a really good defensive defensive team so far. Now you're thinking, okay, it's a Monday Night Football game. Am I going to be willing to play Devontae Smith, or do I want to play some of these other guys on Sunday? Could be a little risky, just not knowing what you're going to get out of Devontae Smith on Monday night. But we've seen Devontae Smith go nuts before. I think that this game in general has a chance to go nuclear. Like if the Chiefs offense figured anything out over the bye week, just anything. We already know the Eagles offense is great. It's humming. But if the Chiefs figured anything out, this game could be the highest scoring game of the weekend on Monday Night Football. Could end up a great game. I assume you're going to it, so you know it's got to be great. Devontae Smith could really have success and be, I guess, a guy who is paid off by a high scoring game and high scoring affair. So I think that there's definitely going to be an opportunity for him this week if this game goes nuclear, like I think it could.
Yeah, I mean, this could end up being a big time scoring game. I think the point total for it was like 45 and a half, 46 points.
Yeah.
But, Chiefs defense definitely can get stingy in those scenarios. And all it's going to take for Devontae Smith is one big touchdown to turn that thing around. So I love that as the high risk, high reward. I think that's kind of been his MO in a lot of games this year, but that seems to be the biggest one of it on the season for him, for sure.
I hope the game goes off. Like, I just hope it's a back and forth. We just haven't seen that from Chiefs games this year like we're used to, and this would be the perfect spot, right? You got Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, the top two MVP guys. Favorites, the top two from last year, Super Bowl rematch. Like, this game is just both teams coming off a bye. It sets up to really be like an in-season classic, and I'm hoping for that. I'm excited for that. Will you be there?
Yes, I'll definitely be there.
Of course.
I'm planning on it being a great game. So I want to leave that place happy with a win. That's the ultimate goal. But if we can get some points scored in between there as well and cap off what I think is going to be a great week in the NFL, then that's an even better treat.
Absolutely. It's Thanksgiving week for us. I'm off on Tuesday. I'll be enjoying the game.
That's beautiful.
Enjoying myself at home, but I'll be enjoying it for sure. It'll be a fun game. Let's get to our quarterbacks and defensive streams of the week before we talk a little Thursday night football, that Bengals Ravens matchup that we talked a little bit about earlier. I'll start with streams of the week. We've taken a couple guys from this Houston-Arizona game so far, and Kyler Murray is back, and he still runs the football. He still uses his legs, so
he was scooting, man,
as a fantasy football player, right? 45% available across ESPN platform right now. Absolutely a streamable option for you this week, and potentially another guy that you pick up and just keep and let him run, and see what happens the rest of the season. But 45% available for a guy like Kyler Murray who uses his legs so much is an issue to me. Like, this guy should be 99% rostered. And I think this is just a product of people being behind still a little bit. He didn't go off. I think he had like 18 fantasy points last week, so it wasn't like he went crazy. But he has that ability to go crazy. And Arizona, I know, it's been, they're not really super talented, but the team has played hard this year. This coach has kept them in games, and I think Kyler is going to come in. He's got something to prove. Is he going to be the quarterback of the future? So pick him up right now. Stream him this week against Arizona. Nope, against Houston, and maybe you just keep him on your team the rest of the season.
Yep, definitely on the clock there in Arizona. This is like a contract year for him almost. So I would count on him popping off, at least putting his best foot forward. My quarterback stream this week is Jordan Love. I have been in a love-hate relationship with Jordan Love this year. Sometimes I can't stand him because he just disappears, and sometimes it's like, okay, you need to be this guy more often. But his matchup this week is against the Los Angeles Chargers, who have just been almost escorting opposing wide receivers into the end zone this year. And so I just really like the opportunity for him to go out there and put up not an amazing game, right? He's not going to throw for 5 touchdowns and 350, 400 yards, but do I expect him to get maybe 275 and a couple touchdowns? Absolutely. And in my opinion, that's a great streaming option. 275, 2-3 touchdowns, no picks. That's going to be right about where you can expect Jordan Love in this game. And, if Aaron Jones is doing him any favors in the passing game, maybe that gets even higher. So
they got to get Aaron Jones more involved in that passing game.
Yep. Absolutely.
Are the Chargers? So you bring in Kellen Moore, and you're still a bad football team. Is this the end for Staley?
I mentioned this in the show. We did the Fastest 40, recorded that last night. So if you're looking for another football podcast, Chiefs podcast in particular, we really recapped a lot of what's going on in the AFC, including the Chargers, and how that's going to impact the Chiefs at the end of the day. What I cannot wrap my mind around is, what does Brandon Staley know about the Chargers owner that has allowed him to keep this job for as long as he has? Now, I'm not that guy that's like, I'll never be that guy that's like, we need to fire this guy, or they need to fire him, or do that, or do this. But I am genuinely surprised that he still has the job. Right? I think you lose to the Lions. You've dropped a couple other what should have been winnable, very, very winnable games. I mean, sub 500 at this point in the season, it's not very excusable when you have a player like Justin Herbert and all the pieces around him on offense. You're supposed to be this defensive guru. You've got this incredibly talented defense led by Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James. I mean, are you kidding me? I just don't understand how they're not winning games. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. The Chargers going to Charger. I think that's the only way you can say it until they fix something.
A part of it's a little bit difficult because when you look at their schedule, right? They beat the Vikings and Raiders and Bears and Jets. Like, of course you're going to win those 4 games. Like, you should win those 4 games. And they play the Vikings today. Maybe they don't beat them anymore. But at the time, the Vikings were kind of struggling. So you win those 4 games. But outside the Lions, they've lost to the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Lions, and the Cowboys. Like, so then you're also like, yeah, that's 4 games that you're probably going to battle and lose in, right? It just, to me, it shows me that they're very mediocre and they can't win the big game. They can't win. They can't beat those teams. And out of those 4 teams, you got to get a win out of it. You got to get at least one. Get one of those wins. They've got the Ravens coming up, the Bills, and then the Chiefs again. I don't know. I think this team could probably still make the playoffs. You got the Packers, Patriots, Broncos twice, Raiders again. You've got winnable ball games on this schedule. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're definitely trending in the wrong direction and on the cusp of missing the playoffs, and that's gonna, I don't know, that's just gonna hurt Brandon Staley, and maybe he's finally fired. It's just an interesting conversation because the team just is not performing the way that we need it to perform. Keenan Allen went off last week. Love to see that.
Great.
Love to see
Eckler's
that.
been
Hopefully
putting
he does that
together some
again.
good,
Eckler's
solid
been
games
good.
last 3 weeks. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even Justin Herbert, right? You look at the numbers they had in this last game. He was 2 for 2 in the red zone. They were above 50 or 60% third down conversion. Herbert threw for over 300 yards, had a couple touchdowns. Keenan Allen obviously popped off, and they lost the game. So, I mean, it's
Yep.
not too often you have a combination of those things and lose the game. And it seems to keep happening that way where they're defying the odds to lose. And so, I
Every
don't know.
time.
I don't know what's going on there, but you know, we'll see if they figure it out. It's not going to hurt me if they don't.
Not at all. Not
Who
at
are you
all.
streaming at defense, brother?
Yeah, I'm going to Miami. Las Vegas, yeah, they looked fine last week. You get your first game with Pierce as the coach now and all the things with Las Vegas, but at the end of the day, Aiden O'Connell is still the starting quarterback for this team, and the Miami Dolphins are coming off of the bye week, so I think I'm very comfortable playing the Miami Dolphins defense this week.
No, I totally agree with that. The Derek Carr doppelganger, not a lot of trust in
Dude,
him.
every time got the same number and everything. Like, what are you
It's so
doing?
weird. It is so weird, but yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. There's not been a lot to trust in with Miami's defense, but I think you can feel pretty good starting them this week if you have to.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Washington. They've had some solid performances throughout the season. They're playing the Giants again. I think they're just going to pummel these guys. It's going to be a situation where the Giants don't score a ton of points, so you're going to get that cushion. We'll also potentially get a couple turnovers and sacks in the mix as well. Um, Washington's been spotty with their performances as a whole, but when they pop off, they pop off. So Washington, I think, for not too many more reasons that I have to explain, is a clear streaming option this week.
Yeah, this was actually my pick, and then I got to the show doc, and you had already picked him. So, woe is me on that one. I missed it out. If before we get to our Thursday night showdown lineups, if you're with us here tonight, thank you for being here. We'll catch some of your last minute start sits if you got them here. Throw them in. Hit that like button if you would on YouTube. Just helps us out quite a bit. And if you haven't subscribed already, we're only 8 subscribers away from 600 on the Bite Size Sports
Hook it
Network.
up.
Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Be here with us every week. Lee, thanks for being here as always, man. You never miss a beat. We did talk about A-Chain tonight. We talked about A-Chain early on. But really just to recap, you're putting him in your lineup. Like, this guy was absolutely
start.
electric for those 3 games. 7 touchdowns in 3 games. 2 of the 3 were multi-touchdown games. You're putting him in your lineup this week. The Las Vegas Raiders, one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. I think Raheem Mostert, Devin A-Chain, everybody, start your Dolphins, y'all. Start your Dolphins.
Hashtag start your Dolphins.
It's that easy, man. You get an offense like that, you just play them.
Have to. You absolutely have to. Thursday night, man. A lot of viable fantasy football options in this game. So it's a little bit of a juicier matchup than the Bears-Panthers game that we got a couple weeks ago.
Can I just say real fast? I'm just happy. I'm excited for the primetime games this week.
Yeah.
The primetime games have been shit. Like, they've been bad.
They've been rough. I'm excited for Al Michaels and Herb Street to actually call a decent Thursday night game.
Yeah, we get a good Thursday night game. The Monday night game is obviously going to be great. I don't even know. Who's the Sunday night game this week?
Sunday night.
Vikings, Broncos. I can get down with that the way the Broncos been playing, but not going to be like high scoring.
Yeah.
But to get 2 out of 3, like, it's been so bad. Like, I feel like outside of the Vikings 49ers game, that one stands out to me. That was a great game. Jordan Addison going off helped me win a tournament as my MVP that night. But outside of that, like, I just don't remember any good primetime games over the last couple of weeks. So I'm just excited about primetime this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. There was a slate a couple weeks back. Maybe it was like us. It wasn't even like all the primetime games. It was like the Sunday slate had a marquee matchup in each section. Like you
Yeah.
started with Chiefs Dolphins. It was that
Oh,
week. You
yeah.
started with Chiefs Dolphins, and then you went to Ravens Seahawks, I think it was, and then you had the Bills and Bengals at the primetime Sunday night game, and then there was another game in there. I think it was maybe Niners
Cowboys and Eagles for that.
Cowboys and Eagles. Yep, there it is. So that was the last like good slate where you were like, damn, I'm gonna get some good football on
All
today. I'm gonna get
day
some
long.
good football in this week. So yes, 100%. There's a lot to like about these primetime games.
But so that week, the other two primetime games, Titans Steelers and Jets Chargers. It's just
Steelers ended up being a decent game, but Jets Chargers is poo poo.
No, I hope that we see some fireworks. That's what I want to see this week.
Yep.
Bengals Ravens, they have absolutely the offensive firepower to bring some fireworks. So I'll let you start. What is your DraftKings Thursday night football showdown lineup?
Yeah, I was putting this together and I ended up hitting submit on this thing. I don't always submit them. I don't always play the daily fantasy on the Thursday night games. I'll usually, if I do, I'll do it on Sundays so I can get some more players in the mix. But I ended up really liking this lineup enough to just say screw it and put the money down on it. At captain, I got Mark Andrews. I love his potential here. He's going against the Bengals, who are top or bottom three against tight ends in the league this year. So running with Mark Andrews in the captain slot, gonna follow that up with Lamar Jackson so I can have that connection. I figure I'm fading a lot of people who are putting Lamar Jackson in their captain spot or putting Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase in there. So I'm actually going to leave both Burrow and Chase completely out of my lineup and rely on a lot of Ravens here. So following up that Ravens kick is Gus Edwards and Zay Flowers just to get everything going on that Ravens offense. And then to finish up everything, I really wanted to go with Justin Tucker on this lineup, but I decided to go with two Bengals wide receivers since T. Higgins is out. So I'm rolling with Tyler Boyd and Trent Irwin, who Burrow tends to find on a couple of very long passes a game. So I'm kind of counting on him to take advantage of that in the Justin Watson type of role for a deep touchdown, and then maybe a couple of other, spot treatments here and there on those third down conversions.
Yeah, Irwin had the touchdown last week early in that game, and I had Irwin. I had a Burrow, Chase, Irwin double stack. And when Irwin hit, I'm like, okay, now we're cooking with gas. Let's go. I don't think I ended up cashing with that lineup, but at the end of the day, but I'm like, man, this is exactly what I needed. I mean, he's super cheap. I assume he's probably super cheap on Showdown as well. He's definitely,
I think it's like 4,700 maybe in that particular challenge, but
he's very cheap on FanDuel as well. Easily could put in every one of my lineups if I needed to. Our lineups are not very different, which is just interesting. First of all, I did not even look at your lineup. So when you just said Andrews, I was like, oh, okay now. Because I also put Andrews in my MVP spot. It's a great spot for Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. So put Andrews in the MVP. It's different on FanDuel. If you haven't played DraftKings or FanDuel, DraftKings you actually have to play. You pay 1.5 of the salary, but in FanDuel all the salaries stay the same. Doesn't matter if you play him at MVP or not. So if Mark Andrews is a $10,000 salary, he's what $1,250 as the or $1,500 I guess as the captain. Whereas if he's $10,000 on FanDuel, he's just $10,000 as MVP. So it doesn't change for FanDuel, which usually brings quarterbacks to be the optimal captain. I still continue to play pass catchers because that's always given me more unique builds on FanDuel and give me a chance to get to the top. I also am playing Tyler Boyd. I am picking Boyd over Irwin for my lineup strictly because Boyd had that drop touchdown last week. He still had 10 targets.
Yep.
I think Burrow is going to try to force feed him a little bit to rebuild some of that confidence after dropping that touchdown. Like sometimes it's psychological, right? Like you dropped a touchdown. Let's get you active early and often in this game just to get that out of your system. So I like that. And then I'm going to go Keaton Mitchell. I know you put Gus Edwards in your lineup, and Keaton Mitchell has been hot. He's not necessarily getting the volume that Gus Edwards is getting, but he's a lot cheaper than Gus Edwards. And if I can get him in the end zone one more time, it's going to pay off. And then I did go ahead and put Justin Tucker in here. So I've got a similar build in terms of I got 4 around 1, 4 Ravens, 1 Bengals. You mentioned you're going heavy Ravens as well. So I think we're both kind of in on the Ravens for tomorrow night.
Yep. No, totally. I don't know. I think it's just got a little bit of a negative vibe around the Bengals right now. And no T. Higgins again. I really
Joe
only
Mixon sucks.
I like the positional, or I guess I don't feel like a lot of people are going to put Boyd and Irwin in their lineups, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot
agree.
of Jamar Chase, a lot of Joe Burrow. So just kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit with it. I don't know. It looked good to me.
I like that. I like that a lot. Before I get my closing statements out, I want to answer Lee's question here. Devontae Smith or Tank Dell. If Nico Collins is out, I'm going back to Tank Dell.
Yep.
Against the Cardinals, this Houston team is humming. I know I talked about Devontae Smith being my high risk, high reward type player. I don't think there's a lot of risk with Tank Dell, so I'm going to go Tank Dell in this situation.
No, that's exactly where I'm at. No Nico Collins, you got to go Tank Dell. He's obviously going to be that guy that supplements a lot of those targets. Devontae Smith, a lot of potential, but Tank Dell seems like a much safer play in that scenario. That's Nico Collins misses time.
Absolutely. Anything else before we close it out?
Man, I don't think so. I'm feeling pretty good about all of my redraft leagues. Sitting at 5-5 in a couple. I'm 6-4 in another one. 7-3 and 8-2 on all 5 of mine. So I'm feeling good going into the playoffs or towards the playoffs.
Maybe next week we can kind of give a quick rundown of where we're at. I with redraft leagues. I haven't really looked into where I'm at with all my leagues, but I'd love to give just a quick rundown of kind of where we're sitting for the season, how we're looking for playoffs. So maybe we'll kind of do that a little bit next week. Give the people a little bit of a peek behind the curtains of how our teams are doing. We're the ones giving you all the advice each and every week, following our own advice, following the advice of our I follow your advice all the time. So just kind of that's what we're here for.
I listen to you all the time too, man. Like there's a lot of perspective you can get from other people when you're not just staring at your own lineup the whole time.
Absolutely. So always hit us up in Discord if you want. There's a link in the description. Join the Discord here for Bite Size Sports. Obviously, you can join it and talk fantasy football with us, but there's also all sorts of sports talk happening all day, every day in the Discord. So go ahead and join that. Hit us up. We'll answer your start-sit questions all throughout the week. You can follow me on Twitter or on X. I'm starting to get there with the X thing. On X at Trevor S_FF. And then follow Bite Size Sports. Subscribe to the channel. We've got so many shows going on. Added a racing show. So if you like racing, Nate's been doing some racing. Added a betting show with Sportsbook Junkies. I know that Kev's been getting into some fighting action. He's been actually live calling live fights. And so if you're into UFC style fights, jump on to, he partners with Carnage Media and they run some fights that he actually goes there and calls live. So he does some pre and post interview type shows with them as well on our channel. So if you like sports, we've got it all for you. make sure you subscribe to Bite Size Sports on YouTube and come be a part of the family here at Bite Size.
Absolutely. Check Trevor out on Fridays too. Rumbles are red, baby. A lot of fun. A lot of fun getting that daily fantasy talk in before the weekend. You can give us a follow at ADP podcast _FF if you're wanting to follow the show on X. At Bite _Size Sports if you're trying to follow us on X there as well. Then you can follow me at Dan _TF40 on IG or X. And check out the other show that I work on, the Fastest 40, in partnership with Odyssey, where we're dropping 2 episodes a week. Chiefs centric, so my Chiefs fans out there definitely want to tune in on that. We got some fun stuff cooking up as we get towards the playoffs, so a lot to look forward to there. In the short term, make sure you set your lineups, put those trade requests out there. If you want to run a trade scenario by us, join the Discord or tag us on X, and we'll give you our honest opinion on it.
Let's go. It's almost playoff time, baby.
Let's get it.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get just by letting them talk.